Thank you, Your Honor, for the opportunity to address the court. As an attorney who is also a Christian, I take my responsibilities as a lawyer very seriously, and I endeavor to be a person of sound moral and ethical character in all of my dealings. In the wake of the 2020 presidential election, I believed that challenging the results on behalf of President Trump should be pursued in a just and legal way. I endeavored to represent my client to the best of my ability. I relied on others, including lawyers with many more years of experience than I, to provide me with true and reliable information, especially since my role involved speaking to the media and to legislators in various states. What I did not do, but should have done, Your Honor, was to make sure that the facts the other lawyers alleged to be true were in fact true. In the frenetic pace of attempting to raise challenges to the election in several states, including Georgia, I failed to do my due diligence. I believe in and I value election integrity. If I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Donald Trump in these post-election challenges. I look back on this whole experience with deep remorse. For those failures of mine, Your Honor, I have taken responsibility already before the Colorado bar who censured me, and I now take responsibility before this court and apologize to the people of Georgia. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Ellis, for sharing that all too often. I don't get to hear the perspective of the accused in these cases, and so that's appreciated.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Some breaking news here. Yet another top Trump attorney, Jenna Ellis, has pleaded guilty to one count of aiding and abetting false statements and writings in Fulton County, Georgia today, opting to enter into a plea deal with prosecutors. In exchange for her cooperation, she'll serve 5 years probation, pay $5,000 restitution, provide documents and evidence to the court, and most importantly, and most damningly if you're Donald Trump, testify against co-defendants. Ellis joins other Fulton County co-defendants Kenneth Chesbrough, the architect of Trump's illegal fake electors scheme, Sidney Powell, another top Trump attorney who played a role in the January 2021 breach of election systems in rural Coffee County, Georgia, and Scott Hall, a bail bondsman accused of entering the Coffee County elections office and illegally accessing voting equipment. Like Ellis, those three will also serve probation, pay relatively minor fines, write apology letters to the people and state of Georgia, and of course, will cooperate against the remaining co-defendants, which at this rate may very well mean Donald Trump and no one else. In fact, I asked my Legal Breakdown co-host Glenn Kirshner about the prospect of all of the co-defendants ultimately flipping against Trump, and he was actually bullish on the idea.
Yeah, I do. I think there's a very good chance that most or perhaps all of the ultimately 19 co-defendants will end up pleading guilty. So first of all, remember, you still have that whole lower tier of fake electors, right? They weren't the kind of players. They weren't the kind of big ticket sort of, doing big ticket damage to our nation the way Trump, Mark Meadows, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, John Eastman, Jeffrey Clark, the corrupt DOJ official, and some of the others were doing. So I have a feeling you're going to see these low-level defendants begin to plead out, perhaps some to sentences of probation, which is what Powell and Chesbrough were offered and accepted. And we can talk about some of the challenges that poses. But I think you're going to see most and maybe even all defendants, perhaps with the exception of Donald Trump himself, end up pleading guilty because, the writing's on the wall. D.A. Willis has been really strategic in the people she has opted to try to flip first. She got that bail bondsman, Scott, what was his name? Scott Hall, because she knew that Scott Hall was basically in league with Sidney Powell in their breach of the Coffee County voting equipment. So Scott Hall flipped, which helped her flip Sidney Powell, which helped her flip Kenneth Chesbrough. And it's really a vindication. This is a vindication of the tactical decisions that Fani Willis not only is making in who she's trying to flip, but in her tactical decision to bring a massive, sprawling 19 co-defendant RICO conspiracy case, because, Brian, we just saw Kenneth Chesbrough go into court and plead guilty to a felony conspiracy charge, proving that D.A. Willis had it right the whole time.
And of course, to see full episodes of The Legal Breakdown, make sure to subscribe to this channel. And so now, given that we've had 4 flips, it's apparent that all of the dominoes are falling. We can continue to expect other co-defendants to come forward because remember, every time a co-defendant agrees to cooperate with prosecutors, that makes the case against the remaining co-defendants that much stronger. And so these remaining defendants have to weigh whether it's more important to contend with a case growing in strength against them by the day, or agree to cooperate with prosecutors and take the relatively minor punishment that comes with it. Very clearly, defendant after defendant is reading the writing on the wall and opting for the latter. Here again is Glenn Kirshner explaining the mad dash to cooperate that we're seeing right now. To that point, will there come a point where prosecutors won't accept any more flips because they've already got what they need? And if so, would that really create a mad dash right now among the remaining co-defendants to go to Fani Willis's office to cooperate?
Yeah, another great question. So when I was involved in large RICO cases and we would indict more than 24 people in one of the cases, there are times where you start pleading people out without cooperation. Why? Because you don't need them. So for example, all of these bail bondsmen, the sort of lowest rung on the criminal ladder down in Georgia, Fani Willis might say, listen, we are so far past what you could have provided if you were a cooperating witness. We don't need you. So they start to make what are called non-cooperation plea offers just to cull out some of the folks who are no longer important to what Fani Willis is trying to build. Now, the flip side of it is Fani Willis might say to people, look, we don't need you anymore, so we're not going to extend you any kind of plea offer. You're on your own. Here's the only thing that will be left for those defendants to do. They can take what we often refer to as a soldier plea. What that means is they can walk into court, they can plead guilty to every count in the indictment just to have it over if there are no plea offers being extended by the prosecutors. But then they are facing a ton of potential jail time if they end up pleading guilty to all counts, including the lead charge, which is the RICO conspiracy count, which carries a mandatory minimum of 5 years and up to 20 years in prison. So, Fani Willis seems to be holding all the cards, and it's just a question of how she wants to play those cards with respect to the remaining defendants.
And don't forget, aside from Hall, Powell, Chesbrough, and now Ellis, Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, has signaled that his defense will likely include blaming Donald Trump as the driving force behind efforts to steal the 2020 election. In fact, in court, Meadows' attorney downplayed Meadows' culpability by pointing out that he never called Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to change the vote totals. During cross-examination with Raffensperger, Meadows' lawyer asked, he didn't make a request that you change the vote totals, Mr. Meadows himself, to which Raffensperger replied, correct. And of course, a question like that only underscores the fact that Donald Trump did in fact make that request. And aside from Meadows, 3 of the fake Trump electors also asserted in court that they acted on Trump's behalf, signaling that they're likely to throw Trump under the bus to save themselves. The attorney for one of those electors, Sean Still, now a state senator, wrote in a filing, Mr. Still, as a presidential elector, was also acting at the direction of the incumbent president of the United States. The president's attorneys instructed Mr. Still and the other contingent electors that they had to meet and cast their ballots on December 14, 2020. And the attorney for another fake elector, Kathleen Latham, submitted a filing stating that she too acted at, quote, the direction of the president of the United States. And keep in mind, all of these flips and signals to flip have happened before any of these trials have even started in earnest yet. But these folks are probably recognizing that it's not worth it to go to prison for someone who A, does not care about them, B, wouldn't do the same for them, and most importantly, C, couldn't even do anything to help them if he wanted to. Remember, we're talking about Fulton County, Georgia. This is a state prosecution, meaning that even if Donald Trump were to win the presidency in 2024, he wouldn't even be able to use his powers as president to pardon them, meaning they have nothing to gain by hitching themselves to the wagon that is Donald Trump, which is probably why they're getting restless fast. So I don't know the final number of co-defendants that'll be left by the time this trial actually kicks off, but what's clear by now is that it's not going to be anywhere near the original 19. So get ready for some more Trump meltdowns, but just know that they're not coming from a position of strength, they are coming from a position of weakness. They are owed entirely to the fact that Trump can see how dire things are looking for him in Fulton County, Georgia, where one by one his top lieutenants are abandoning him to save themselves. So if you're wondering why this bus ride feels so bumpy, it's probably because all of Trump's allies are busy throwing him under it. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.